Imagine a tunnel so deep that you are buried under 2.5 kilometers of solid rock, with mountain peaks pressing down from above and temperatures hotter than a desert. That's not a nightmare. That's the Gotthard Base Tunnel, the longest railway tunnel in the world. You are watching MegaConstructs, where we explore colossal builds from around the globe. Let's start today's journey. The mountain that stopped Europe. Imagine you are a truck driver, hauling a load of Italian wine to Germany. You've been on the road for hours, but now you see it ahead, the Alps, a wall of rock and ice that has divided Europe for thousands of years. To get to the other side, you have two choices. You can take the old mountain pass, a narrow, winding road that snakes up to 2,000 meters, where snow and fog are constant dangers. Or you can join the queue at the Gotthard Road Tunnel, where millions of vehicles crawl through every year, stuck in endless traffic jams. For decades, this was the reality of crossing Europe. The Alps were a natural barrier, forcing trade to go up, over, and around. By the 1990s, the situation had become critical. The old railway lines were too steep and too slow. The roads were clogged with trucks. Something had to change. So, the Swiss did what the Swiss do best. They didn't just build a road over the mountain. They decided to go through it. 57 kilometers underneath the peaks. Straight, flat, and faster than anything that had come before. This is the story of the Gotthard Base Tunnel, the longest and deepest railway tunnel in the world. A project that took 17 years, $12 billion, and the labor of thousands of workers who toiled in heat, darkness, and danger to punch a hole through the heart of the Alps. In this video, we'll go deep underground. We'll see how engineers solve problems that would have broken lesser teams. We'll see what happens when 3 million tons of rock push against a concrete wall. And we'll ride a train that travels at 250 kilometers per hour, completing in 20 minutes what used to take hours. This is not just a tunnel. It is a revolution beneath the mountains. And it all started with a single question. How do you move a continent? The barrier, why the Alps had to be broken. To understand why the Gotthard Base Tunnel is so important, you have to look at a map of Europe. The continent is split in half by the Alps, a mountain range that stretches 1,200 kilometers from France to Austria. For centuries, this was a massive obstacle. Traders had to use high mountain passes, which were often closed by snow for months at a time. By the 19th century, engineers started building tunnels. The first Gotthard Rail Tunnel opened in 1882. It was an incredible achievement for its time, but it was built near the top of the mountain. That meant trains had to climb steep slopes, twist around tight curves, and crawl along at slow speeds. By the 1990s, this line was completely overloaded. The situation on the roads was even worse. Every day, thousands of trucks thundered through the Gotthard Road Tunnel, spewing exhaust into the mountain air. The Swiss were fed up. Their beautiful alpine valleys were being choked by traffic. The air was dirty. The roads were congested. Something had to give. So, in 1992, the Swiss people voted. They approved a radical plan to build a new, high-speed railway that would cut straight through the base of the Alps, hundreds of meters below the existing tunnels. The project was called NEAT, the new railway link through the Alps. The goal was simple: move freight from road to rail. Get the trucks off the mountain passes and put them on trains that could zip through a flat, straight tunnel at high speed. It was an environmental and economic vision rolled into one. And at its heart was the Gotthard Base Tunnel, a 57-kilometer long hole in the ground that would become the longest railway tunnel in the world. But building that hole would push engineering to its very limits. The dig. 5 fronts, 1 million tons of rock. The numbers are almost impossible to grasp. The Gotthard Base Tunnel is 57 kilometers long. That's 35 miles. To put that in perspective, the English Channel Tunnel is only 50 kilometers long. The Gotthard is longer and deeper. At its lowest point, the tunnel sits 2,450 meters beneath the mountain peaks, nearly 2.5 kilometers of solid rock pressing down from above. If you took all the rock excavated from the tunnel, 28 million tons of it, you could build 5 great pyramids of Giza. To carve out this massive hole, engineers didn't just start digging from the two ends. They attacked the mountain from 5 different points simultaneously. Here's how it worked. They built access tunnels from the valleys, slanting down into the mountain. At the bottom, they created massive underground caverns, some as large as cathedrals. From these caverns, They launched the main tunnel boring machines in both directions, north and south. The idea was to divide the 57 kilometres into smaller, more manageable sections. The contractors claimed this method would reduce the construction time from 20 years to about 12 years. But even with this clever strategy, the tunnel still took 17 years to complete. Why? Because the mountain fought back. At its peak, over 2,500 workers were labouring underground at the same time, in conditions that can only be described as brutal. The rock was so deep that temperatures inside the tunnel reached 46 degrees Celsius. That's hotter than a summer day in the Sahara. The giant machines, TBM versus the mountain. To chew through the Alps, engineers brought in the heaviest artillery in the tunnelling world, tunnel boring machines, or TBMs. These are not your average drills. Each TBM was 410 metres long, longer than 4 football fields laid end to end. They stood 3 stories tall, and their spinning cutter heads were studded with dozens of hardened steel disc cutters, each weighing hundreds of kilograms. The Swiss gave their machines names. There were Sissy, Heidi, and Gabriella, and they were absolute monsters. As the cutter head rotated, it pressed against the rock face with 26 tons of force per cutter. The rock would crack and fall away in small chips, which were then sucked up by a conveyor belt and carried out of the tunnel. But the TBMs had a weakness. They only worked well in hard, stable rock. The Alps, however, are not uniform. In some places, the mountain is made of granite, rock so hard it blunts cutting tools in hours. In other places, it's fractured gneiss, schist, or even powdery material that crumbles at the slightest touch. When the ground turned soft, the engineers had to switch tactics. They pulled the TBMs back and used an older, more dangerous method: drill and blast. Miners would drill dozens of holes into the rock face, load them with explosives, and then run for cover. The boom would echo through the mountain, and a new section of tunnel would be born. This hybrid approach, TBMs for the hard rock, drill and blast for the bad ground, was the only way to survive the Alps. But it made the job incredibly complex. At one point, the geologists discovered a massive fault zone filled with highly fractured rock. This area, known as the Piura Basin, was so unstable that the engineers almost abandoned the project. They had to dig an entirely new exploratory tunnel just to figure out a safe route around it. This was the reality of tunneling. The mountain was full of surprises, and only the most careful planning could keep the project alive. The foundation, concrete that lasts 100 years. Once the rock was excavated, the real work began. A raw tunnel is just a hole in the ground, cold, damp, and dangerous. To turn it into a railway, the engineers had to line it with 400,000 cubic meters of concrete. That's enough concrete to build 40 Burj Khalifas. But this was no ordinary concrete. The Swiss government demanded that the tunnel last for 100 years. That meant the concrete had to be perfect. No cracks, no leaks, no weak spots. To achieve this, the engineers used a technique called shotcrete. Think of a giant spray gun that fires wet concrete at high speed onto the tunnel walls. The shotcrete bonded instantly to the rock, sealing it and preventing cave-ins. On top of that, they applied a waterproof membrane, a thick plastic layer that stops any water from seeping through. Finally, they poured a second layer of concrete, called the inner shell, which created a smooth, flawless surface for the trains. In some zones where the rock pressure was extremely high, the inner shell was made 70 centimeters thick, almost 3 times thicker than normal. Every batch of concrete was tested. Every slab of rock was inspected. If a single batch failed, it was rejected and sent back. There was no room for error. This tunnel had to stand for a century, and the builders were determined to get it right. The fire, learning from tragedy. Building a long tunnel is hard. Making it safe is even harder. The engineers knew they had to prepare for the worst-case scenario, a fire deep underground. The lessons came from past disasters. In 1999, a truck caught fire in the Mont Blanc tunnel between France and Italy. The blaze raged for 3 days. The temperatures inside reached 2,000 degrees Celsius, hot enough to melt the steel reinforcement in the concrete. Smoke filled the tunnel, and 39 people died. In the Gotthard Base Tunnel, that nightmare scenario was front and center. But the designers had a brilliant plan. Instead of building one large tunnel, they built two separate single-track tunnels, one for northbound trains, one for southbound. Every 325 meters, these two tunnels are connected by a cross-passage protected by fireproof, airtight doors. There are 178 of these cross-passages in total. In the event of a fire, passengers can walk through these doors into the other tunnel, which will remain free of smoke. Powerful ventilation fans can suck the smoke out of the burning tunnel and pump fresh air in from the other side. At the two intermediate stations, Cedron and Fado, there are giant emergency caverns where trains can stop. These caverns are fully equipped with escape routes, emergency lighting, and direct phone lines to the control center. If a train breaks down or catches fire, it will automatically stop at the nearest emergency station. But the Swiss didn't stop there. They also installed a sophisticated detection system at the tunnel entrances. As a train approaches, it passes under a scanner that checks for overheated axles, leaking chemicals, and even shifting cargo. If anything is wrong, the train is stopped before it enters the tunnel. As Peter Jadelhauser, the head of safety, put it, the first priority is to prevent trains that are not in perfect working order from entering the tunnel. This is the philosophy of the Gotthard: prevent problems before they happen. And if they do happen, contain them, evacuate quickly, and save lives. The ventilation. Breathing under a mountain. 2 kilometers underground, air is in short supply. Without ventilation, the tunnel would quickly fill with diesel fumes, dust, and heat. So the engineers built the largest tunnel ventilation system ever created. At the Cedron emergency station, nearly 800 meters below the surface, they carved out a massive ventilation shaft that rises all the way to the mountaintop. This shaft acts like a giant chimney. In normal operation, it draws fresh air from above and circulates it through the tunnels. In an emergency, the fans can reverse direction, sucking toxic smoke out and pulling clean air in from the portals. The system is controlled by a network of sensors and computers that monitor air quality, temperature, and humidity in real time. The entire operation is powered by hydropower, pulled straight from the Swiss grid. It's a delicate dance of air and rock, designed to keep passengers and workers alive in one of the most inhospitable environments on Earth. And it works. Since the tunnel opened in 2016, there has been no major fire incident, but the system remains on standby, ready to spring into action at the first sign of trouble. The cost? 17 years, $12 billion. Of course, this miracle of engineering came with a price tag. The total cost of the Gotthard Base Tunnel was approximately 9.5 billion Swiss francs, which is around $11.3 billion. When you include the entire NEAT project, which includes the Sennery and Lochberg base tunnels, the total bill rose to nearly 18 billion francs. To put that in perspective, you could build the Burj Khalifa 12 times for the same money. You could pave a 6-lane highway from Paris to Istanbul. The Swiss people approved this expense because they understood the long-term benefits. Every day, the tunnel removes thousands of trucks from the roads. Every year, it saves millions of tons of CO2 emissions. Over its 100-year lifespan, the Gotthard Base Tunnel will pay for itself many times over in reduced pollution, faster travel, and economic growth. But the price was not just financial. 9 workers lost their lives during the construction, a sobering reminder that even with modern safety systems, tunneling is inherently dangerous. The Swiss government honored their memory, and their names are inscribed on a memorial near the tunnel entrance. Their sacrifice is part of the tunnel's legacy. The journey, riding through the mountain. So, what is it like to actually ride through the Gotthard Base Tunnel? Let's imagine you are a passenger boarding a train in Zurich. You settle into your seat, and the train pulls away. For the first few minutes, you see green Swiss meadows, neat villages, and cattle grazing on the hills. Then the scenery changes. The hills become steeper. The valleys become narrower. And then, the mountain, you feel a slight pressure change in your ears as the train dives into the portal. The daylight vanishes, replaced by a warm orange glow from the tunnel lights. For the next 20 minutes, you are surrounded entirely by rock. There are no windows to the outside. You're too deep for that. Occasionally, you'll see flashes of light as you pass one of the 178 cross passages. But otherwise, it's just the smooth, steady hum of the train at 250 kilometers per hour. Then, without warning, daylight returns. You've emerged on the southern side of the Alps. The landscape is different now. Warmer, more Mediterranean. Vineyards. You've crossed a mountain range in the time it takes to drink a cup of coffee. This is the magic of the Gotthard. It turns a journey that used to take 3 hours into a quick hop. It makes the distant close. It brings Milan within 2 hours and 40 minutes of Zurich. And it does all of this while leaving the alpine beauty above completely untouched. The trains are silent, the peaks are pristine. The only sign that anything has changed is the occasional glimpse of a ventilation shaft hidden among the trees. Conclusion: the tunnel that united Europe. The Gotthard Base Tunnel is more than a hole in a mountain. It is a statement. It says that Switzerland, a small country with no oil, no army, and no ambition beyond its borders, can still do something that no other nation has achieved. It says that engineering is not just about building things. It is about solving problems that affect millions of people. The tunnel has taken trucks off the roads, cleaned the alpine air, and connected northern and southern Europe in a way that was once unimaginable. The Gotthard Base Tunnel is not just the longest railway tunnel in the world. It is a reminder that we are not prisoners of geography. With enough will and enough engineering, even the Alps can be moved. Thank you for watching MegaConstructs. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of the world's greatest engineering feats, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell. And let me know in the comments, would you take the 20-minute ride through the Gotthard? I'll see you in the next video.